Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Ad Astra Kansas Money Talks podcast. I'm Joe Buba and I am joined by Mark Johnson and Bob Schwartz of Bob Schwartz Financial. You can find out more about them at bobschwartzfinancial.com. They have offices in Victoria, Kansas, and where we're at today in Silver Lake, Kansas. So if you've watched the podcast before, we like to talk about issues that impact Kansans and their money. Sometimes it's specifically a Kansas issue. If you didn't see the last episode, it was all about Kansas and property taxes. But this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about something a little more generic. If you're watching this podcast, you probably are a connoisseur and a consumer of financial information, and you probably know there's a lot of it out there. And some of it's really good, and some of it is downright horrific. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to sort through the noise, navigating financial advice that you find online. And there is a lot of it. So, Mark, I'll start with you. Maybe give us a little thought of why is this important to the average consumer, that they kind of have an idea of what's going on with some of the information that they're getting.
Yeah, the first thing is, when I get online or when I even look in my email or anything that I do, there's so many things like out there, just things about finance that, especially personal finance, that you're going to see, or taxes, that so many people are throwing in your face. And if you're someone that's maybe not versed on things, there's some things that sound really, really, really good. And sometimes those are completely untrue.
What's that old saying? If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. That's pretty much exactly how kind of a lot of this is. So there also, and I'll say this right now, there's also a lot of great advice that you can find. There's great podcasts, great shows. We're making a show on YouTube right now. Yeah, there's great advice on there, but you need to make sure you're finding the right message for you. And I think that some people struggle with that. And you click on the first thing you see and take that as you will, take that. And we just kind of want to talk about, how do you find stuff that's actually accurate, and how do you verify it as well?
So I think if people understand social media and the algorithms that are behind it, social media tries to learn what are you interested in, and then it's going to show you more of that. But just because it's showing you more doesn't mean that they've done their work and they're only showing you the good stuff. They're going to show you everything that has to do with that topic. In this case, we're talking about, financial advice and things. So where do you find that most people are getting their advice online?
I think the younger generation, they love to see Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. There's tons of little, anecdotal clips of.
And that's just, for me, that's kind of scary to think about it, because those are 30-second, 45-second, 1-minute clips a lot of times. And if people are getting financial advice in 1-minute segments, holy cow, that's scary.
And like I said, there are some good people on those sites that are, that are CFPs, or that are attorneys, or people that have a responsibility behind them. There's also a lot of people in there that have no responsibility, can say and do whatever they want.
Maybe you could dive into that just a little bit, Bob. So as a CFP and a fiduciary, you have certain responsibilities that you have to do based on, the guidelines from your governing agencies. People that don't, they can say anything they want. Is that correct?
Right. And one very, very important thing to think about is nothing fits everybody. And
Yep.
So if you're watching an advertisement, or, and to talk from the older generation of people that are on the internet, most of our clients in my age category are getting their information from YouTube. That's the YouTube Shorts and the YouTube shows. And like Mark said, there's a lot of great information out there. But if somebody's talking generically about you need to buy this, or this is the sniz, nothing's right for everybody. Nothing's right for everybody, and there are some things out there that are right for nobody that gets talked about a lot.
So in addition to social media, another huge influence, I know, on everything, but for me, it's a huge influence, are friends and family. Sometimes friends and family are doing something, and it could make perfect sense for their situation, but maybe it's not great advice for your situation.
Yeah, and sometimes you're going to get amazing advice from that, that brother that's a great businessman and doing these things, and in that same vein, the other brothers that lead you to tax evasion. Like both those things can be true, and you have to be very careful of that. Yeah.
As you start to navigate through, whether it be social media, family, TV, AI.
Guy next to you. The guy next to you at the plant.
Right, the coworker.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would assume AI is going to start playing a part in this as well. But what are some of the red flags that people should look out for and maybe start to see that this is not good advice?
Over-promising. Hey, you want to 5x your money in the next 2 years, blah, blah, blah. I had someone come up to me a couple weeks ago, and they're like, my boss told me they had an investment where they quadrupled their money in 1 year if you did this and this. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't sound legal, or it doesn't sound right, And my mention was, did they talk about what type of risk you had to take? And he's like, no. I'm like, well, if that's true, you probably could. Very good chance you could have lost all that money, or maybe they did.
Right.
Yeah.
There's one going. I've seen it 6 or 7 times. It's get 10 to 13% per month return if you are a qualified investor, and that is a term in our industry. A qualified investor, $2 million in net worth, or an income of over I forget, 250,000 a year. But what they mean when they say a qualified investor is you're still breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if 10 to 13% a month paid monthly.
Where can you get that? Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, just sit back and think about it. That's probably not going to happen that way.
And Bob, you kind of mentioned it, but I'd like to dig in just a little bit deeper, because I think this is something that I know before I really started getting into finances, I didn't think about this, but that one size fits all, that is not good for financial investing and where you get your advice.
I mean, that's the biggest thing since I've started to now, that's understanding that nobody is the same. I mean, nobody's situation's the same. Nobody's risk tolerance is the same. And anyone trying to sell a blanket, the same blanket to every person, they're not doing anybody justice.
So we're in an industry that is exploding. The investment advice industry is, I mean, even though it's so much bigger than it's ever been, it still is in its infancy. And there is a lot of potential income in our industry. And unfortunately, when you have that, you also have a situation where people can get into it for the wrong reasons. And the reason one of the reasons I still do what I do is, in 48 years, I've never seen anybody that it works out, oh, you're just like the last person. Everybody's different. That's what makes it exciting. And then developing a plan that client, and developing several plans for that client so they can say, I like that one, or and to know what the pros and the cons are. Get market-like returns with no downside risk. Time out. How are we going to do that? Yeah. Well, there's a cap on it, as we've all seen, looking at different types of products. You have to understand there's people that maybe aren't carrying the kind of credentials that you want your advisor to have.
Gotcha. And I think it's such a great point that you make about the one size fits all. When I listen to financial podcasts, and I do, I love it when I hear that personality that's on the other end say, these are general terms. We do not advise that you specifically do this.
Yep.
These are just some ideas. I love it when I hear that, because I know that they're actually trying to educate me, not sell me on something because they don't know my situation.
Yeah.
So would you say that's probably, we talked about some red lights, maybe that's one of the green lights that maybe you're getting some good advice there?
Yeah, they're actually saying like, hey, I'm not, this is not a one size fits all. This is for your personal situation. They talk about how they're not giving, this is not, true financial advice. This is just, I'm talking through a situation. Some really popular, just some really popular people that, that I'm sure if you've got to this point, you're probably maybe listened to or heard of, but like the money guys on YouTube or Jill on Money podcast, like those people are CFPs. So they are held to that responsible. Like you want to see those people that actually have those credentials behind their name, or that, they have the disclaimers in their episodes. They talk about how they can't give certain types of financial advice. Yeah.
And one of the things that is a term that I think people hear a lot, but maybe don't understand, is the term fiduciary. So not every financial advisor has to be a fiduciary. Is that correct? Or maybe I need educated on that as well. But maybe, Bob, can you talk a little bit about what a fiduciary is, what it isn't, and why that is important for people to understand?
Try to simplify it is that you're working with somebody that's looking in your pocket and not their pocket. Any advice that a fiduciary gives, whether that's legal advice, an attorney is a fiduciary, as registered investment advisors and CFPs, we are held to the fiduciary standard, which means we must act in our client's best interest. So after collecting information and forming a plan, what we are required to share and show clients is the best way for them to reach their goals, given their timeline, risk tolerance, and their wants. And then what is maybe the most important thing is how to make that as efficient as possible for those clients.
So I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I know you always cringe when I say this, but can you give me an example of somebody who maybe works within the financial industry that's not a fiduciary?
Well, sure. Pure insurance agencies aren't held under the fiduciary standard. They're held under the best practice standards. And the difference there is I might only have one product in my briefcase, or I might have two products. And those two products are what I'm going to show to you, regardless of your situation, which falls more into and when I started in the industry, that is the cubby hole that I was boxed in. I had a briefcase that had two products in it, and that's all I could talk about. So I had to figure out how that product fit the client, not what the client needed to fit into their financial plan. And I think that's how I would explain it.
Okay. So Mark, as we then kind of transition to what can people do to try to filter through kind of that good advice that's out there and stay away from that bad advice, or those bad entertainers, so to speak, because that's more of what they are.
Yeah. So the first thing is, like, if you're watching something, you need to probably ask yourself, like, who is this for? Is this for me? Is this for someone that's 31 years old and, pretty young in their career? Or is this for a retiree? Is this for some, who is this for? And then what's the motive of them creating this source of content that I'm creating? Are they trying to sell me something? Are they trying to get me, or they're trying to tell me about how great this plan is? Are they just trying to give me information?
Maybe get clicks.
Yeah, just to get clicks and get viewership. And then you need to look at, okay, like, hey, this is great information. I think this is useful for me. Well, you should click on that person's, you should find out about that person. Oh, this person's a fiduciary, or they're a licensed investment advisor, CFP, whatever, and this, this seems like pretty good advice. Or I click on that link and it's just some random bot that has reposted, and you have no idea where this advice is coming from this random person. I'd maybe question that a little bit. and then decide if it's relevant to you. Is this relevant? This information that you just found, is it relevant? Can you use it, and how? And if you're not sure, I would just pause, do some research on your own, call someone, like if you do have a financial planner, or if you have someone that you trust that's, your mom or dad that's good with finance, and, ask them if they know anything about it. But
Never hurts to get a second opinion
Yeah,
or some good
exactly.
advice. So, Bob, I'll transition to you here. Like you said, you've been in this industry for 48 years. The advent of social media and having so much information available at your fingertips is relatively new within that time frame that you've been in the industry. Obviously, there's a lot of great information out there, but it probably still, I'm going to guess that you still like the one-on-one situations and get the opportunity to sit down with somebody. What's the value in working with a financial advisor?
Back, and I'll just tell a little story. When I was a young man, 8, 9 years old, when I was a little kid, is where I learned about the market. And I learned it at a table with my mother, who was a school teacher, who was talking to me about equity. And I learned about it that way, and I learned that she had a stockbroker, and she had to make a long distance call to Topeka, Kansas in order to make a trade. And when she made a trade, it cost a lot of money to make those trades. And so consequently, she'd always talk about cost, and having that one-on-one conversation helped me learn to absorb all those things. Now, spin forward, and I think about this often, how excited she would be to be alive today. Because she could find out more information than she had any access to by going down to the library in our little town and looking at the Wall Street Journal, which is what she perused to make her investment decisions. Today, she can have more information at 6 a.m. in the morning than in 5 minutes know more than she could have known all day. And that's really, really cool. But if you don't know what filters you're looking through, if you don't have a game plan on what you're looking at, it can be bad. But overall, that's where you bring in people like Mark and I, and there's many in our industry. We're not the only ones that try to be consistent in what we do. But when you work with an advisor today, they should help clear up the air, not muddy it up for you. They should give you clarity where you know what you own. And my other pet peeve would be, and also be able to teach you how to read your statement. Most people don't look at their statements, which is good on one side, especially during volatile markets like we have right now. It's best don't look, Ethel. But on the negative side of that, when people get nervous is when they don't know what they own. And Mark and I are both firm believers. Our firm believes that everyone should know what they own. And I'll throw this out there. How many people listening or watching any podcast about finance have any idea what the mutual fund they're in owns, or the ETF they're in owns, or the annuity that they have, being able to read the statement and make sense of it? And so having an advisor that can help you do those things, teach you those things. And I've gone on too long about that, but it's very easy, and Mark is so good at this because he's out of the education field of educating people on what they own.
Take as long as you need, because I think it's a great point that you make, because there's the folks that do it on their own, and there's the folks that go to advisors, and I think that kind of finding that happy medium of somebody who's working with somebody that they trust, but also engaged enough to understand what's going on. That's probably the best kind of client, I would imagine. I'll transition again, and Bob, I'll ask you this question. We are, as a society, and as we're really looking in the short term, and with a plan, a financial plan, you have to look beyond that. Sometimes there are needs for short term, but maybe talk a little bit about why it's so important to, the difference between a short-term plan, long-term plan, and why it's important overall for those as well.
Short term, for instance, would be I've got a sophomore in high school, and we haven't put any money away for their college. And what's the best way for us to put some money away over the next 3 years? Long-term planning would be, like Mark said, the 31-year-old that has been in their 401k for 9 years, can't tell you what they own, can't tell you whether they're aggressive or, helping that client understand that we're shooting towards a target of somewhere between 55 and 70, and what kind of things do we need to implement to help them reach those goals. It's a key thing during market times like this. It'd be very easy to get out of the market. You get it one day and the market's off 900, Dow's off 900 points at 9 o'clock in the morning. Let's get out. That would be the immediate thought. If you have a game plan, if you have a financial plan, and you're going towards goals, well, these short-term things are generally noise. They're generally reactions to noise. They're reactions to CNBC or to tariffs or to some TV host trying to get views, okay? And we've all watched CNBC, we've watched Fox Money, we've watched all those shows, and they're great. I enjoy watching them, but understand why they're on there. They're on there to have you stay watching, and it's a lot more exciting to go, hair's on fire, the market's down. That's much more views than everything's going well, and we've got a long-term game plan, and that's what we're going to do.
Good advice as always. As we start to wrap up this episode, Mark, let's talk just a bit about what people can do to kind of build their own filter, and how they can filter out some of the noise, as Bob likes to say, and focus on those content creators or those financial podcasts that are really giving good advice.
Yeah, I would really focus on what are your priorities? Come up with 2 or 3 priorities that you have for you and your family. And then when you're looking at advice, evaluate them through those lenses. Is this going to help me do one of those 3 things? Is this providing me some sort of new information that could possibly help with one of those 3 things? If not, I'd probably just kind of skip and move on, or go ahead or look at it just for the entertainment value, but not the, really try to take it in as advice. Look at it through, hey, I want to retire at 60 years old. This video is all about how to retire early, okay, then look into that more and do your research. But yeah, create those lens for you to really look at advice and decide, what type of content you really want to digest and research and look into.
Yep, I think that's great advice, and the advice you find online, not all of it's good, not all of it's bad, and definitely need to do your due diligence and definitely look into where you're getting that advice. And just to kind of recap, always remember that, and Bob put it very well, not every piece of advice that you see out online fits every situation. In fact, most of the time, everybody needs very tailored advice. And there's a lot of great information out there, and you can kind of sift through that, find what works best for you. But also, if you're at that point where you're ready to start working with a financial advisor, there's lots of great ones out there. If you're in Kansas, give Mark and Bob a call.
Yeah.
And you can find out more information on how to get a hold of them at bobschwartzfinancial.com. And once again, they have offices in Victoria and Silver Lake, Kansas. Gentlemen, thank you for another great episode. And everybody, if that's watching, if you want to give us a thumbs up and subscribe, we would appreciate that. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.